Hello, good morning. It is Andy from Email Love, and today we are going to be discussing how to go from Figma to Iterable with one click. So let's do a brief intro. If you don't know me, I'm Andy King. I run emaillove.com. It's an email inspiration website and blog, and we also build the Email Love Figma plugin, which is our main product. I am based in San Francisco, and today I am going to run you through a few slides. So we'll look at the traditional way to build an email and then recreate it within Iterable. We'll then look at the new way to collaborate, design, and build an email campaign using the Email Love Figma plugin. We'll also talk about why smart brands are switching to our Figma plugin. And then we will do a live demo where I will build an email using our plugin inside of Iterable, and then show you how to export a template as well as a snippet from Figma to your Iterable account. And we can make this interactive. If you are joining us live, please feel free to drop any comments or questions in the chat box. Okay, so let's jump into the slides. I'm just going to change my layout here so that you can see the whole slide. Okay, so let's talk about the traditional process of designing and building your email template and then getting it into Iterable. So traditionally, the marketing team, usually a CRM or a lifecycle marketer, would create a brief for your email campaign. And this is typically a brief that includes the subject line, the pre-header text, the copy, the offer, the CTAs. That is usually in some kind of Google Doc or a Google Sheet. They hand that off to the designer, who then uses usually some pre-existing templates or components to design the email campaign in Figma. And often the marketing team will also be in Figma, adding comments, adding feedback on the design, getting it looking just right. When it's approved in Figma, they then hand that design off to an email marketer or a developer who is responsible for translating the Figma design into responsive and accessible email code. And quite often, this involves recreating the email in a drag and drop environment, or even coding the email using some pre-existing templates. And so this is the frustrating part. It can easily add 1, 2, or even many more hours to your email production process, because you're basically trying to recreate a design in Figma. Sometimes it's very hard to recreate the design exactly as it is in Figma. And if you have things like dynamic content, or you're trying to pull in content from a catalog, this can all make it very, very tricky to translate those design elements in Figma into actual email code. And so the end result is the marketer isn't quite happy with the design. It doesn't quite look how the design looks in Figma. The designer doesn't like it. The marketer is frustrated because they spent hours trying to recreate it. And basically, no one is quite happy with the end result. So if this is familiar, let me know in the comments. But this is a process I've experienced myself as an email designer for over 10 years. And I've worked with many teams that have gone through this frustrating process. And so here is the new way. Here is kind of a summary of those problems. So basically, it slows down the production process because you're having to recreate the design. And so the design team kind of has a slower turnaround time. There's developer bottlenecks. If you are coding the email, you have to actually, wait for a developer to get bandwidth to actually work on the template, which Quite often, it's not a high priority for developers. Templates look different in Figma than they do in the actual HTML, and overall, this can increase the time to deployment. So it can take days or even weeks to actually design, build, and deploy an email campaign. And the other thing about this process is it can be very hard to scale across platforms, especially if you're rebuilding your email templates in a drag and drop environment inside of Iterable. You can't easily then migrate that template to HubSpot or Marketo or Pardot. Quite often, the companies that we're working with have several marketing automation tools in addition to Iterable, because they might have a B2C side of their business that uses Iterable, and they might have a B2B side that uses HubSpot, for example. And so, again, adds more time because you're then recreating your templates and your emails in two different platforms. Okay, so that's the problem. It's kind of a summary of the current workflow that many teams have with Iterable, and some of the problems that we have experienced with that process. So introducing the Email of Figma plugin, this allows you to go from an email design system in Figma. So you have a set of pre-configured, pre-approved components in your Figma instance that you can build your emails from. You then use the plugin to preview the message, add your links, add any handlebars logic, add your snippets, and then you can go directly from Figma to Iterable with a single click. So this is how Email of customers are streamlining the email design and production process. And so this is why Iterable customers in particular are adopting Email of. Firstly, they love having an email design system inside of Figma. This allows the marketing team to build on brand emails themselves using components that the design team has already approved and kind of configured themselves. It also allows you to visually integrate your catalogs and your handlebars logic. You don't have to actually add that directly in the HTML. You can do it in a more visual way directly inside of Figma. And then because you're in Figma, Figma is probably the most collaborative tool on the market. And so you can have your designers, your developers, your marketers all in a single place collaborating on an email and not having to have design in Figma, have the HTML in Iterable or somewhere else. It keeps everything in a single collaborative space. And then obviously this cuts down the email production process because you're no longer recreating the templates, the snippets inside of Iterable. You are just going directly from design to code. And the other benefit of this is if you are using more than one marketing automation tool, you can now export using the Figma plugin to almost any marketing automation tool you want. HubSpot, Salesforce, Braze, MailChimp, Klaviyo, whatever tools you happen to be using internally. And quite often, larger enterprise companies that are using Iterable have more than one platform. You can now go from Figma to all of those different places with a single tool. Okay, so those are the benefits of using the Figma plugin. I think in general we can agree Figma is also one of the best tools for designing emails. It's the most collaborative, can be used across different parts of the organization. Most teams already have access to it, and it has enterprise-grade features like version control. It has a scalable architecture, so you can create components, you can create variants of a component, add properties, and this makes it very scalable because you can update your components in one place, and have that update cascade across every single instance of that component. So if you want to change your logo, update the address in your footer, you can do that in one place, and then that's going to update every single template in Figma where you've used that component. And then in general, Figma has a very rich plugin ecosystem, rivaling even that of WordPress, and that includes the Email Love Figma plugin. But there's lots of additional tools you can use to streamline and optimize your email design and creation process. Okay, so that's kind of the spiel on why you should be designing and building your emails in Figma with the Email Love Figma plugin. Let's actually jump into Figma and show you how this works. So I'm going to switch screen here and we will jump into Figma. And we are going to build an email for a really cool brand called Turo. Turo is a kind of like a peer-to-peer car rental service. I would describe it as probably the Airbnb of car rentals. So here's an email that I actually built yesterday. We are going to rebuild this. You can actually see this design on emaillove.com. If you actually search Turo, you'll see all of their emails. And this is just one that I like the look of, and I'm going to recreate this template for you and then export it to the template section of Iterable. We are also going to create a footer and turn it into a snippet and show you how that works, because I know Iterable customers love using snippets. They're really handy and useful, especially for things like headers and footers. And so what you can see here is we have this is Figma, and then this little box here, this is the Email Love Figma plugin. This allows you to generate new components. We have over 100 different templates and components stored inside of the plugin, and you can also save your own custom components in here as well. And so to build this Turo email, let's first create a frame. So here's my Email Love frame. And the frame is basically the table container for all of your content. And the name of the frame is what is going to be merged into Iterable. So just think of the naming convention you would have for your templates. I'm just going to call this one Turo promo template. And then the first thing I'm going to do is basically add my content. So at the top here, we have a banner with the logo. This section is an image. And then these sections here are an image with HTML text. And so the way that I build out is typically building out the structure of that content first with our generic components. So this is basically going to create master component libraries for you. So you can see here, this has now generated a master component with an image. I'm going to use that for the logo. I'm also going to add a component for an image component for this hero section. And then I'm going to find a single column component with an image and some text to replicate these subsections here. So I think I have here's a component with a little icon and some text. We can use that. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to hit Command-C, Command-V to copy this. So the top one is my master component, and then this one and this one are actually child components of the top one. And you'll see at the end, I'll break this out into a component library and show you how that works. But this is one of the most powerful features of Figma, so it's worth understanding the parent-child relationship of these components. We then have a little kind of line break here. That is just an image, so we'll add another image component in here as well for that. And then we have obviously a 2-column section with these images here. Okay, so let's just add another image, and then we will find our 2-column image sections. And then we also have a button at the bottom, and then we will also recreate this footer and turn that into a snippet. Okay, so let me just find a 2-column section. I think this one here works quite well. Again, I'm going to create one parent component, and then I'm going to copy it to create the child. And then we will finish off by adding a button. So obviously this looks nothing like the Turo email on the left, but you'll see very quickly that we can recreate it quite easily. So first step is updating this image, and I'm going to basically select the image and then upload the header from my desktop. So I actually already have the images on here. And by the way, we host the images, and so you don't need to upload those into Iterable either. Okay, so I'm going to set the image to fill. Okay, let's have a look here. Okay, so now we have the logo section. We can select this image, click on properties. We can add the image URL. We can add the alt text. We could also merge in a dynamic image from Movable Ink or Nifty Images if we wanted to. But that is basically the first step, is adding the logo. And then I'm going to upload the hero section here, which again is just an image. Okay, and again, I'm going to set this to fill the space, and we can actually just preview this really quickly. Okay, so here's how that is looking. And I'm going to actually, you can see here, by default, the background is set to white, but I'm actually just going to change that to be the same background color that we have here, which is kind of, maybe you can't see it, but it's kind of a beige color. Okay, so next up, we need to recreate these sections here. So we have a little icon, a headline, and then a paragraph. And so what we can do here is, I'm just going to replace the email love heart icon with the Turo icon. We can increase the size of that a little bit. You can see here, as I increase the size of this image, that's going to also replicate in these two sections here, because this is the parent and these are the child components. So again, very scalable. I'm going to copy my code, and we use MJML as the email structure. So on the left-hand side here, we have a wrapper that contains the content. You have a section, which is the row, and then you have columns inside the row. The columns contain images, text, and buttons. And I can actually copy a text frame, and you can see here, I can put this paragraph in a separate section. And obviously we want to style this so it looks a bit more like the email on the left-hand side. Okay, so let's remove or update the background color here. And we just added support for gap in Figma. So you can now select a column, and you can use this little gap here to adjust the spacing between your content. Okay, so let's change that a little bit more. I think maybe 10 pixels spacing between the image, the headline, and the paragraph works quite well. We also want to increase the padding over here. So all the padding and all the spacing is controlled by Figma Auto Layout. This is something that your creative and design team will be very familiar with, and they can get your components looking just right by using these controls on the right-hand side. And the way I would suggest building your templates is you have the creative team design the components, the master components, and then you as the marketer would use these components to update the images, update the text, and kind of use these components as building blocks to create your content. Okay, so that is looking pretty good. I think we actually want to increase this padding even more. Okay, that's looking great. And then what we can do here is we can update these child components. And you can see how easy it is just to copy and paste from anywhere. You can also turn these fonts into typography libraries if you want. So, for example, this headline here, I could go to the typography section of Figma, and I could actually turn this into a text style that I can save. And again, this becomes scalable because I can reuse this text style across all of my templates. And then if I ever want to change or update the text style, I can do that in one place and have that text update across all of my templates. For now, though, I think it's looking quite good. I do think there's a little bit too much padding between these sections. So I'm actually going to... Okay, so that's looking good. Okay, so let's just preview this now just to see how it is rendering. You can see at the top here, so far this is a 50 kilobyte email, so it's in no danger of being clipped in Gmail at this point. We can see the fonts. I think the fonts could use some work. So what we can do is let's just lighten this font and increase the line height. I think that looks better. There we go. And then if we want, we can also check out how this is looking in dark mode in the preview. So if we click on the dark mode button here, you can see it's actually going to render very nicely in dark mode as well as light mode. Okay, so let's add this little line break here. Okay, and then we will just change the background color. And then we need to update the images here. The images, one nice thing about Figma is we can apply corner radius to the images directly in here. You don't necessarily have to do that inside of the image. So you can have a square image and we can apply CSS around that image to kind of change the shape. Okay. Okay, I do think we need some additional padding, so I'm going to add padding around here, and we also need to update the background color. And then that was pretty easy. Again, for the images, if we want to link these, which we probably do, you just select the image, click on properties inside of the plugin, and you can add your image URL, your alt text, And the same thing for buttons. You would select the button, and then in the properties tab, you can add your button URL. So let's just update the button section. And again, using Figma's tools, we can very easily adjust the style of this button. Okay, and now the last step is to create this footer. And I'm going to use the build your own section of Email Love to do that. So in the build your own tab of our plugin, you can add an empty container. So it could be a hero section with a background image, a single column, multi-column, or even a code component. And so the footer is just a single column section. So I'm going to add that. And you can see here on the left-hand side, it adds a wrapper with a section and an empty column. When you select the column, you can then populate it with text, images, buttons, tables, dividers, navigation links, social icons, or code components as well. And so in this case, it is just going to be some text at the top, some social icons, and then some more text. Okay, and if we bring this down here, we can just copy it across. Again, I'm going to use gap to oops, I'm going to select the column and then use gap to update the spacing. And then copy across these sections. Update the background color. And then also add some padding around this. Okay, so that is looking pretty good. Pretty simple once you know what you're doing. Okay, so let's preview this one last time before we start exporting this to Iterable. Okay, so here it is on desktop. And then we can also check it out on mobile. One thing we can do is on mobile, we can change the padding here. This looks like it has a little bit too much padding around these sections. I can actually do that directly from the preview by clicking on this little cog icon, going into mobile styles, and then selecting this section. And the desktop version has 91 pixels of padding around it, which is probably too much. I'm going to decrease that to 30 pixels. So that will save. And then again, we can, okay, that looks much better. And then these natively stack. Okay, excellent. Let's check it out on dark mode one last time. This is looking excellent. We could probably do some things to optimize the social icons in dark mode, but we won't get into that during this session. Okay, so before we export the entire template to Iterable, we will want to actually turn this footer into a snippet. And so to do that, I'm going to basically put these, I'm going to put it into its own frame. I'm going to call it footer snippet. Again, this will be the name that appears inside of the snippet in Iterable. So just keep that in mind before you export it. I'm then going to go to the export button, select Iterable snippet, and then you can either click on the blue button at the top here, or you can also just copy the code directly. And this is assuming you've already connected Iterable to the Email Love Figma plugin, which again just requires an API key and selecting the API instance you're using. It's either US or EU. So I'm going to click on the export, and that has successfully uploaded that as a snippet inside of Iterable. And so let's jump over to Iterable, and we can take a look at where that is. Okay, so here we are inside my test Iterable account. If we go into snippets, we can now click on this one, and we can actually see that it has been uploaded successfully. It is just the content of that section. It doesn't include the CSS or the head and the foot of the email. You're not uploading a whole email. You're just uploading part of an email. So this works quite well for single column content like headers and footers. It does get a little bit more tricky if you have multi-column content as a snippet. So just keep that in mind. You will need to figure out how to get the CSS from that section into the head of your email. That's probably a topic for another day. But in this case, this is going to work really well. So I'm going to copy this snippet to my clipboard, and then let's jump back into Figma. And what I'm going to do is select my template, and then I'm going to scroll to the bottom here. There is a code component, and I can simply paste in the snippet token or merge tag, and then add that custom code. And you can see here, this is now going to merge in my iterable snippet into this template automatically. The other thing I'll note is this snippet contains the unsubscribe. The way that this works is when you export your email, your snippet, we link it to unsubscribe.com, and then we merge in the unsubscribe merge tag for that email platform. So they all have slightly different merge tags. So Braze is going to be different to Iterable versus HubSpot versus Klaviyo. And so it's just worth noting that. But Iterable is going to know that this snippet contains the unsubscribe. And so I can now select my template, go to exports, select Iterable as the export option. The images will be hosted automatically. You can add your pre-header text at this point as well. Okay, so it's going to merge that text into the HTML that we export. And then we simply click on the export button. And then that will export this as a template to the templates section of Iterable. And so if we jump over into our Iterable account and go into content and then templates, we can now see here is the Turo promo template. We can open that up. You can see it has successfully been exported. We can edit this either as rich text. I personally prefer the side-by-side editor so I can see the code. Again, you could add, if you did have dynamic content, you could add your handlebars directly into Figma as well via the code component. So you don't have to do that directly in the HTML. You can preview this, preview it on different devices. And because we're using MJML, this is built to render nicely across Outlook, Gmail, Yahoo, even the really tricky email clients like AOL and free.fr, some of those really small ones. These emails are rendering very nicely across those templates as well. I can kind of show you how it looks. Okay, so one thing to note, this is a good example in Yahoo. One thing that we can't control is how the dark mode is going to render some of these clients. So here's a really good example from the Yahoo dark mode. It's taking this beige color and turning it brown. you might not like that, but there's actually no way for us to control how dark mode is rendered in some of these email clients. We can do it for iOS devices, but Gmail, Yahoo, Outlook, they kind of do their own thing when it comes to dark mode. But you can see here, here's Outlook. So again, really nice rendering across, web, mobile, and even desktop. So here's a Gmail Pixel 6. It's downloading a little bit too slow for us. But yeah, you get the picture. Basically, this is going from Figma to responsive and accessible email code with a single export, and that includes snippets and HTML. So you can see, obviously, at this point, send yourself a proof, get your team in here, and then schedule the email. And again, the idea is, how much time would this save you on a weekly, monthly, yearly basis if you were going directly from Figma to Iterable with a single click? Our customers are saving hours on every campaign because of this. And so that's pretty much all the content I had for today. If there are any questions, please drop those in the chat section. I'll be happy to answer those, or you can obviously connect with me on LinkedIn, send me an email. We also have a public Discord community, which you are welcome to join and ask questions in there as well. So if there are no questions, I think we can wrap this up. Looks like someone said they will be reaching out on LinkedIn. Thank you for that. I look forward to chatting with you. And for anyone else, please do feel free to reach out to me directly. Thank you. Have a great day, everyone.